Hey, good afternoon. Today we're going to work on constructing a tangram. A tangram is just it's a geometric puzzle of sorts that a lot of people think originated in China. So that's potentially its origins. It's really fun puzzles to create, and it's going to be the basis of a lot of the puzzles that we make in class. So if you look at our square here, step 1 is to draw and label a square just like this that has 8-inch sides. So all these sides should be 8 inches in length. So I draw A, B, C, D. All these are 8 inches in length. Step 2, if you're looking at those instructions, is to draw that diagonal from B to D. And you want to make sure that your square is labeled just like mine so that you can follow along with instructions and they'll make sense. So BD was step 2, draw segment BD. Now step 3, we're going to find the midpoint of AB. What you could do, if you have a ruler with you, you can mark the center, you can measure it, find half, mark the center, or if you have a compass but not a ruler, what you can do is, that's not what I wanted, you can make those two arcs, and then where those arcs crossed, draw your line straight down, and that'll tell you where your midpoint is. So we have our midpoint, we're going to label this E. Okay, so we had segment BD, the diagonal. We found our midpoint of AB, and we labeled that E. Now we're going to find the midpoint of AD. Same thing, you can either measure it if you have a ruler on hand, or if you don't have a ruler, that's okay. You can use those compass tools to find the midpoint with the two arcs. So I have my midpoint of AD, and we're going to label that midpoint F. So I had the midpoint of AD is E, the midpoint of AB was E, AD is F. This is point F right here. So we made our square, and then we made BD. Then after we made BD, we found our midpoints of AB and AD. We labeled those E and F. So our next step, right now we're on step 5, if you're following along. We're going to draw that line segment EF. So I have EF now. Okay, and this is where it gets a little bit interesting. You're going to have to keep finding midpoints. So the midpoint thing never goes away. We're going to find the midpoint of EF. So let's find our midpoint of EF. And make sure that if you're doing this with a compass, that's probably the best way to go. If you're doing this with a ruler, make sure that you are very precise with your measurements. So EF, we found the midpoint. We're going to label that G. So that's point G. Alright, so we've got ABCD, we found BD, and then we found the midpoints of AB and AD. We labeled those, we drew a line segment between them. We found the midpoint of EF, labeled it G. And now I'm going to draw CG. So I'm going to actually move this up here so I can draw that. I'm going to draw CG. G. That was step 7. That was to draw CG. Step 8, I'm going to find the intersection of CG and BD right here, and I'm going to label that H. It's step 8. So we've done the first 8 steps. If you're through the first 8 steps, your tangram should look like this. On step 9, it says to find the find the midpoint of HD. And find the midpoint of HD over here. Alright, so let's see. HD, midpoint of HD. About there. Midpoint of HD, and I label that J. Now I'm going to draw FJ. FJ. That was step 10, was to draw FJ. And now we're going to do the exact same thing on the other side. So I'm going to find the midpoint of HB on the right. Let's see what that gets us. That right there. Midpoint of HB. I'm going to label that K, and then I'll connect that with E. I'm sorry, I won't connect that with E, I'm going to connect that with G. I misread that. So I'll connect that with G, and now I'm going to cut along all of those lines. So I'm going to make a square over here. So I get a square, and my notability crashed, that's okay. Okay, a square. Square, and then I'll get a triangle, and this parallelogram, and then I'm also going to cut out, I've got 2 congruent triangles. Down here, and then I have a smaller triangle up on the top here. So I'm going to cut out all of these shapes. Oh, and don't forget this triangle on the left like I just did. Do that in green. So I'm going to cut out those 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 shapes, and then we're going to use that to form some patterns and to solve some puzzles. That's a tangram, and that's how you would construct that on a blank sheet of paper.